Speaker, I recently visited a business in Kirkby in Ashfield in the East Midlands. Funnily enough, I didn't see the Honourable Member for Strangford at the time, but this business told me that the increase in national insurance contributions is going to cost them £240,000 a year, which will stop them recruiting people and giving their employees a pay rise next year. So does the Chancellor agree with me? It's time to reverse this ridiculous decision and help drive growth in the East Midlands.
Mr Speaker, we all know how important it is to encourage savings because so many people are a paycheck away from poverty. But there's been a lot of discussion about lazy capital in cash-only ISAs, for example, and other savings accounts. And I know there's a drive by government to see greater investment. Would the Minister like to expand on the government's thoughts on this, and particularly if she can make any comments about the security of the cash ISA?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On that point, it's been widely reported that the Chancellor is planning to slash the amount that savers can save in ISAs from £20,000 to £4,000 per year. Will the Chancellor rule out this punitive measure that will see savings drop and push even more people into income tax?
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The City of London has been a leader of innovation in the world of finance and savings for a few hundred years now, and it's been successful because it has always seized opportunities and innovation when presented. And in that spirit, we are pleased that the Chancellor, in her Mansion House speak, embraced the concept of securities tokenisation. But we now find that the catalyst of this innovation in the UK, a pilot for the digital gilt instrument known as Digit, has found itself in a 2-year black hole. Innovation is not something that can hang around for 2 years. So can the Minister give assurances that she will do everything she can to deliver Digit as soon as possible?
Stop what you're doing, because Britain just witnessed one of the most shocking political meltdowns in modern history. Rachel Reeves, the so-called economic mastermind of the Labour government, was left humiliated and trembling as Nigel Farage exposed her lies one by one in front of millions on live television. What started as a calm debate quickly turned into a political bloodbath, with Farage refusing to let Reeves wriggle out of the questions she has been dodging for years. This wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was the moment a career built on deception began to crumble under the weight of truth. The first cracks appeared when Nigel Farage raised the issue that Rachel Reeves has leaned on her entire career, her supposed record at the Bank of England. For years, Reeves has repeated the same line, boasting to anyone who would listen that she spent a decade shaping Britain's financial system from inside the most powerful economic institution in the country. This was her badge of honour, the credential she waved in the face of critics, the story that made her sound like an expert no one could challenge. But Farage came prepared. In front of the cameras, in front of the audience, he dropped the facts Reeves hoped would stay buried. Records don't lie, Rachel Reeves didn't spend 10 years at the bank. She barely scraped 5.5, and even worse, she wasn't the economist she claimed to be. She was answering phones, handling complaints, doing customer service, not designing policy, not managing Britain's economy, not what she has been selling to the public for years. The silence that followed was deafening. Reeves tried to smile, to laugh it off, but the mask slipped instantly. Farage pressed harder, and Britain saw something rare. The Chancellor of the Exchequer stripped of her polished image, scrambling for excuses, unable to hide behind spin. Farage knew the power of the moment. He looked her straight in the eye and asked the question that cut deeper than any insult. If you lied about something as simple as your own job, why should the British people trust you with theirs? The audience gasped, and Reeves froze. Her calm, controlled tone evaporated as she snapped back, trying to twist words and shift the blame. But the damage was already done. The woman who has lectured Britain for years about truth and responsibility was cornered, and for once, there was no escape route. The meltdown had begun. But Farage wasn't finished. He reminded everyone that this wasn't the first time Reeves had been caught out. He dragged into the light the scandals she desperately hoped the public had forgotten, like the year her parliamentary credit card was confiscated after she racked up thousands in unpaid charges. Imagine that, the woman responsible for safeguarding Britain's finances treated like a reckless teenager who couldn't be trusted with plastic. Farage hammered her with the obvious question: how could someone who couldn't manage a credit card be trusted with trillions of pounds of taxpayer money? Reeves flinched, stuttered, and lashed out, accusing Farage of cheap attacks. But the facts spoke louder than her excuses. This wasn't a cheap attack. This was history catching up with her, exposing a pattern of arrogance and entitlement. And here's where the meltdown reached boiling point. Reeves tried to counterattack, throwing insults at Farage, accusing him of focusing on gossip instead of policy. But Farage wouldn't let her off the hook. He pressed her again on her so-called record in government, pointing to Britain's anemic economic growth under her leadership. 0.1% growth, barely above zero. while ordinary families are crushed by rising energy bills, unaffordable mortgages, and wages that don't stretch far enough to cover the basics. Farage painted the picture brutally. While other nations surged ahead with growth of 2 or 3%, Britain stumbled in the mud, trapped under Reeves's failed stewardship. The contrast was devastating. Reeves tried to laugh, tried to spin, but the more she spoke, the worse it got. Her argument sounded hollow, delusional, disconnected from reality. The audience could see it, and more importantly, they could feel it. Rachel Reeves was falling apart in real time. The woman who once projected unshakable authority was unravelling, her composure breaking down under Farage's relentless pressure. This wasn't just a political debate, it was an exposure, a brutal tearing down of the facade she had built for years. Every lie, every exaggeration, every scandal was dragged into the light, and Reeves's only response was to melt down in front of the nation. Nigel Farage had done what the media, the opposition, and even her own party had never dared to do. Strip away the pretense and reveal Rachel Reeves for what she truly is, a politician built on spin, arrogance, and deception. And Britain watched as that image shattered on live television. Nigel Farage wasn't satisfied with just exposing her lies about the Bank of England, or reminding the nation about her humiliating credit card scandal. No, he went deeper. He wanted the audience to see the bigger picture, the thread of corruption and deceit that ran through not just Reeves, but the entire political machine protecting her. And once Farage started pulling at that thread, the whole rotten fabric of Westminster began to unravel on live television. He reminded Britain that Rachel Reeves wasn't some isolated figure who made a mistake here or there. No, she was a central player in a government that rewards failure, covers up scandals, and lies to the public without shame. Reeves, the woman who once had her spending privileges stripped for reckless misuse of taxpayer money, was now the very person deciding how every pound of the public's money should be spent. And Farage hammered the hypocrisy home with brutal precision. If an ordinary citizen stole money, they'd be hauled into court. When an MP does it, they get promoted. The look on Reeves's face said everything. She wasn't just angry, she was panicked. Because Farage wasn't wrong, and deep down she knew it. The meltdown escalated further when Farage exposed her hypocrisy on pay rises. He reminded viewers that while millions of ordinary families were struggling, choosing between heating and eating, rationing food, and drowning in debt, Reeves and her colleagues had voted to line their own pockets with higher salaries. Reeves, who had once been deemed too irresponsible to handle a taxpayer credit card, had the arrogance to stand in Parliament and claim she deserved more money. Farage's words were like daggers. You couldn't even handle a £4,000 bill, and now you think you're worth a £10,000 pay rise. The audience reaction was clear, the tension electric. Reeves fumbled, tried to drown him out, her voice cracking as she accused him of playing politics with serious issues. But every word she spoke only dug the hole deeper. Because in that moment, she didn't look like a serious chancellor. She looked like a cornered politician, exposed and unravelling. Farage then shifted the spotlight back to the economy itself, the arena where Reeves has always tried to project herself as untouchable. And this is where the humiliation turned brutal. Reeves claimed that under her watch, Britain had stability, that growth was happening, that her policies were working. But Farage had the facts, and he didn't hold back. He pointed out that Britain's growth was a pathetic 0.1%, numbers so weak they barely registered as progress, while other nations surged ahead. He highlighted how foreign investors were pulling out of Britain, how small businesses were collapsing under the weight of rising taxes and regulations, and how families were being pushed to the brink by skyrocketing mortgages and energy bills. And then he hit her with the killer blow. You promised prosperity, but all we've got is poverty. You promised growth, but all we've got is decline. You promised leadership, but all we see tonight is a meltdown. Reeves's composure was gone. She raised her voice, she snapped back, she tried to turn the focus onto Farage personally, calling him divisive, dangerous, a man of the past. But the problem was, the people watching didn't see a dangerous man of the past. They saw a politician telling the truth, exposing the rot, and standing unafraid in the face of a government that has shielded itself with lies for too long. Meanwhile, Reeves looked defensive, rattled, desperate. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. One figure standing tall, relentless and composed, while the other spiralled out of control, her mask slipping further with every passing minute. And here's where the suspense deepened. Because this wasn't just about Rachel Reeves anymore. Farage broadened the attack, dragging the Labour establishment into the spotlight with her. He reminded the audience that Reeves wasn't an outlier. She was a product of the system, a system that covers for incompetence. A system that rewards loyalty to the party over loyalty to the people. A system that elevates the very worst and hides their failures behind spin. Rachel Reeves isn't the problem, Farage thundered. She's the symptom. The real problem is a government that thinks it can lie to you, rob you, and laugh in your face while you struggle to pay your bills. That was the moment when Reeves completely lost control. Her voice rose to a shout, her hands shook, and she accused Farage of being a populist, of stirring anger instead of offering solutions. But the irony was brutal. The more she accused him, the more she exposed herself. Because the public didn't see anger being stirred, they saw anger being revealed. Anger that had been simmering for years as politicians like Reeves lived in comfort, while ordinary Britons paid the price. Reeves wasn't just sweating under the lights, she was visibly shaken, her eyes darting, her words stumbling, her entire aura collapsing. And the meltdown wasn't just about being cornered by Farage, it was about something deeper. It was the realisation, live on television, that the shield of protection she had enjoyed for so long, from friendly journalists, from her party colleagues, from the establishment itself, was gone. Farage had ripped it away, and what was left for the whole country to see was a chancellor who wasn't a genius, wasn't a leader, but a liar, who had finally run out of room to hide. Rachel Reeves was already wobbling on the ropes, but Nigel Farage wasn't done, not even close. He knew the nation had seen her panic, the cracks in her polished image, and now he wanted to drive the dagger deeper by exposing the very foundation of her political career. Because what Reeves has always relied on is the illusion of competence, the carefully curated story that she is a safe pair of hands for Britain's economy. But Farage turned that illusion into rubble, and he did it with the same weapon he's always wielded best: cold, undeniable facts wrapped in brutal, unfiltered truth. He began by dismantling her economic record. Reeves had bragged endlessly about her fiscal discipline, her so-called balanced approach to Britain's finances, her ability to deliver stability in turbulent times. But Farage tore that myth apart with example after example. He reminded the audience that Britain's debt had ballooned under her watch, that her tax hikes were crushing businesses into closure, and that ordinary people were being taxed like never before while their wages stagnated. He called her economic plan not a plan for growth, but a blueprint for decline. The phrasing cut through the studio like a thunderclap. Reeves, clearly rattled, tried to protest, waving statistics she had memorised, but Farage struck back with the simple truth. You can spin numbers, Rachel, but you can't spin empty wallets. You can't spin repossessed homes. You can't spin families forced to choose between heating and eating. The audience erupted with murmurs of agreement, and Reeves's voice faltered again. And then came the killer pivot, the moment when the meltdown shifted from embarrassment to catastrophe. Farage turned away from dry economics and hit her where it hurt most: trust. He reminded Britain that Reeves wasn't just an incompetent manager of money. She was a proven liar who built her career on exaggerations and cover-ups. He went back to her Bank of England claim, hammered the lie again, and tied it directly to her pattern of behaviour. If she'll lie about her own job, she'll lie about your job. If she'll lie about her credit card, she'll lie about your taxes. If she'll lie about her record, she'll lie about your future. Each line landed like a punch, and Reeves had no defence. She tried to shout him down, her face red, her voice cracking, but all it did was make the meltdown more visible. The suspense thickened as Farage pulled in fresh ammunition, the hypocrisy of Reeves claiming to champion working families while voting for policies that crushed them. He painted a picture of Britain under Reeves: energy bills skyrocketing, mortgages doubling, small businesses shuttering, and yet she stood in Parliament boasting about stability. He called it what millions at home were thinking: delusion. This isn't stability, Rachel. It's suffocation. It's the slow death of a once great economy under your so-called leadership. Reeves's eyes narrowed, her lips tightened, and she fired back that Farage was peddling populism and fear, but it was too late. The audience could see it. She wasn't rebutting the facts, she was lashing out, desperate to stop the bleeding. And here's where the real panic showed. Farage widened the lens again, connecting Reeves to the wider failures of her party. He accused Labour of running the economy like a cartel, rewarding their own, punishing the public, and hiding behind the excuse of global pressures while siphoning wealth into their own hands. Reeves tried to interrupt, claiming he was exaggerating, but Farage overpowered her with specifics: parliamentary perks, inflated salaries, taxpayer-funded luxuries. He painted Reeves not as a serious economist, but as the face of a self-serving elite. And with every example, Reeves's body language gave her away. Her hand gestures became frantic, her speech sped up, and her mask of calm professionalism shattered completely. By now, the meltdown wasn't just visible, it was undeniable. Reeves's tone turned shrill, her attempts at humour fell flat, and her counterattacks bounced off Farage like raindrops off steel. The audience wasn't laughing with her. They were watching in fascination as a senior government minister collapsed under pressure. And Farage, sensing the shift, pressed even harder. He leaned in, his voice calm but cutting, and asked the simplest, deadliest question of the night. "Rachel, why should anyone in this country ever believe a word you say again?" Silence followed. Reeves stumbled, muttered, tried to pivot to policy, but it was over. The meltdown had reached its peak. She looked not like a leader, but like a liar caught red-handed, flailing for an escape route that didn't exist. And yet, Farage wasn't done twisting the knife. He reminded Reeves that for years she had been shielded, protected by friendly media, defended by party colleagues, insulated from the kind of scrutiny ordinary people face every single day. But that shield was gone now. "This is what accountability looks like," he told her, and Britain saw what happened when the mask was ripped away. Reeves, the supposed steady hand of the economy, had been exposed as a fraud, and she couldn't hold it together. Her meltdown wasn't just a moment, it was a revelation. A glimpse into the truth that the establishment had been desperate to hide. Rachel Reeves was no longer in control of the stage, the conversation, or even herself. What began as a calm exchange of ideas had spiralled into a complete political collapse. The meltdown was no longer just about Nigel Farage exposing a few uncomfortable truths. It had become a symbol of something far greater, a government rotting from the inside, led by figures who cannot withstand the heat of real accountability. And Reeves, trembling, stammering, and visibly defeated, became the unwilling face of that truth. The meltdown intensified into humiliation when Farage laid out the cost of Reeves's failures in human terms. He spoke of families skipping meals, pensioners sitting in cold homes, small businesses closing their doors forever, all while Reeves claimed her economic plan was delivering stability. He contrasted her boasts with the reality of Britain's 0.1% growth, with workers drowning in tax rises, with mortgages rising faster than wages. And then came the final blow. "Rachel, stability doesn't mean keeping the country on life support. Stability means growth, prosperity, hope, and you've delivered none of it." Reeves froze, her face pale, her voice shaking, as she tried to insist the numbers proved otherwise. But her words were drowned out by the weight of reality. And then, in the most devastating moment of the night, Farage stripped away the last of her defences. He accused her of betraying the very people she claimed to represent. He reminded Britain that Reeves had voted for pay rises for herself, while millions were struggling to survive. He reminded Britain that Reeves had lied about her credentials, misused taxpayer funds, and failed to deliver on every promise. "This isn't just incompetence," Farage thundered. "This is corruption, plain and simple." The audience fell silent. Reeves's eyes darted, her voice cracked, and she lashed out with accusations of populism, extremism, anything to shift the spotlight. But it was too late. The meltdown was complete. And here is where the story widened beyond Reeves herself. Because her collapse wasn't just her own, it was a warning sign for the entire Labour government. Farage framed her downfall as a glimpse into the rot at the heart of Westminster, where lies are rewarded, failures are excused, and the people pay the price. He reminded the audience that Reeves had been protected for years, shielded by colleagues, guarded by the media, insulated from true scrutiny. But when the shield was ripped away, when the truth was dragged into the light, she couldn't survive. And if she couldn't survive, how many others in government were just as vulnerable, just as dishonest, just as ready to melt down when confronted with reality? Rachel Reeves didn't just lose an argument that night. She lost the very foundation of her authority. The meltdown wasn't a single outburst. It was the unmasking of a politician built on lies and arrogance, cornered by truth and crushed under the weight of her own record. Nigel Farage didn't just win a debate. He revealed something far more dangerous. That Britain is being run by leaders who cannot withstand the simplest test of accountability. Reeves tried to spin, she tried to laugh, she tried to fight back. But in the end, all Britain saw was a chancellor collapsing in real time, her credibility shattered, her mask ripped away. And that is why this moment will not be forgotten. Because it wasn't just about Rachel Reeves melting down. It was about a country finally seeing, in one explosive exchange, the truth that had been hidden for far too long. The truth that the people in power are not untouchable. The truth that the lies always catch up. And the truth that when someone finally dares to confront them without fear, the entire house of cards can come crashing down in front of the world.